That's new. So welcome everyone to the new series on living an engaged life post-pandemic is kind of what I'm calling it. So we're just going to work through a variety of topics, just kind of re-engaging with the practice as we really, I think, emerge from in many ways emerge from this kind of lockdown or highly restricted situation that we've been in for over a year, and how it's going to feel different, right? There's all kinds of views being that are out there from psychologists and psychiatrists and other folks about what this means for different people. It's not going to be the same for all of us. So I'd like to explore what it means from a Dharma perspective, and sort of how we re-engage in this way. And I mean, we'll still be dealing with anxiety. I said we've done all these sessions on mindfulness and the Dharma and anxiety, and that those topics don't become irrelevant because it's part of being human to deal with stress and anxiety. That's the first noble truth. So as I said, during the pandemic, and it's not over yet, let's acknowledge that, but we've explored many aspects of stress and anxiety that's created by the fear and uncertainty around the pandemic. And it's, as I've said, it's kind of added on a layer of stress and anxiety onto what we might already be dealing with in our lives. Perhaps we felt fear, perhaps disconnected, limited. And these are all kind of natural human reactions to an event like this. That whole fear plus uncertainty is where anxiety is fertile ground for anxiety, when there is this fear and uncertainty. So as a post-pandemic reality emerges, I think we can move to a new re-engagement with life, to reconnect and open to life. So this series is going to delve into how we can do that, how we can moving from fear to wisdom, compassion, joy, happiness, effortless effort, and how right view can guide us in this. So we're, to move beyond this kind of extra anxiety that the pandemic has added to our lives. So we still recognize and acknowledge the anxiety that's there, and we move towards a new re-engagement with life, to really reconnect and open to life. And it can happen in all kinds of ways. I've been saying to friends, I have a suspicion that for some of us, it's going to be like the roaring 20s again. Some people are going to just want to reconnect and kind of make up for the year where we haven't been connecting so much. And it could be much like the roaring 20s when they came out of a pandemic in the early 20s. But for others, it might not be that way at all. Some people I've talked to have found the quiet to be very empowering. Who did I hear? An interview with Neil Young. He said, I don't think I'm going to go back to the way I used to live my life at all. This quiet and peacefulness that I found, this space, I've just found so much beauty, and I've just connected with nature in a new way. And I want to, just really continue that. Of course, I'll see my friends and connect with people I couldn't see before, but I'm really going to kind of scale that back a lot. I don't know what his life was like before, but I'm sure he was in demand as a human being in terms of his music and his engagement with the world. So I want to really explore how we engage with life, to explore our relationship to the reality as it emerges, to the way we live, and to do it like consciously. So maybe for some of you, it means more stillness, the way Neil Young spoke about. Oh, and another one is David Suzuki said the same thing. In fact, it's a really interesting interview or discussion, really, between David Suzuki and Neil Young, talking about living during the pandemic and what they see sort of as the pandemic, so we'll move into a post-pandemic kind of situation. So I really want to talk about awareness, and I know we've talked about this a lot. And, bringing mindfulness into our daily life, but I think sometimes just going back to basics, back to the fundamentals of the practice can be so helpful, and it comes from me knowing this kind of intellectually, but also a kind of re-engagement for myself as I've been practicing in the last few weeks with awareness. So awareness can do a lot of the heavy lifting in this practice. It's one thing I've discovered. We talk so much about investigation, right? That we recognize and we investigate and observe, and then we understand, and wisdom arises, right? That's kind of the way that the Dharma unfolds. But one thing I've discovered recently is that really just awareness itself can do a lot of the heavy lifting. It can really just on its own be so transformative. Just seeing is often enough to even to break free of a habit. Just seeing it. Of course, when awareness isn't enough, we then move to investigation and understanding, which is required then, right? To see how we're creating suffering. Sometimes we have to dig a little deeper and say, okay, what am I really getting out of this? This habit pattern, for example. But for so much of what's happening in our lives, just being conscious moment to moment is very powerful, and as I said, can do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of letting go of the ways that we create suffering for ourselves. And this happened when we were doing the habit loop for me, and I kept noticing this sense, and I've said this before in the group, kept noticing this lack of peacefulness would arise, a kind of uneasiness would arise. It's just a bodily sense of uneasiness, not contentment. That's so. It just do you know what I mean? It's just this kind of a feeling, and I would go, "Wow, what's that all about?" And I would know, "Oh, my mind was just off thinking about something else. I was not present with my present moment, with what's in front of me. The mind was elsewhere." And I thought, "Oh, that's a habit. I don't know if what is in front of me isn't kind of interesting enough. The mind goes off and kind of entertains itself or something, and this creates this uneasiness, this dis-ease." So I just kept noticing that, and just seeing that was very transformative. And it got to the point where it kind of lost its allure, just running off in thought, and the mind really settled uh, um, significantly, just from that, just from seeing, just from the bringing awareness to that. In fact, the other thing I've noticed, and this, I don't know if this will sound strange or not, but um, my wife thought it was a little strange. So there's a case of one. In my dreams, I'm mindful. If that makes so, I'll be having a dream, and all of a sudden I'll go, I'm aware of what I'm doing. There's awareness in the present moment in my dream, and I thought, and I would wake up and go, I'm present in my dream state. I don't know if that's a thing, but that's what's happening. I don't know if it's a common occurrence or not. I haven't heard anybody else talk about that, but so just the power of awareness itself, just being. Is it one of the Ajahns, Tanzania, I think, is the one who talks about the importance of continuous awareness. It's got a good book. I think it's Relax and Be Aware or something like that I've read within the last few years. And I remember that continuous awareness. So just for the next week, just think about coming back again to awareness, to being conscious with your life. And if that Gilbert study that I think we've talked about here before, where they use the phone that would randomly say, what are you doing? Were you thinking about what you were doing while you were doing it, or was your mind off somewhere else? And people would answer the question, and then they would say, how do you feel? How happy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And they would rate their happiness level. So they found two things. They found one, that almost 50% of the time people are thinking about something else other than what they're doing. Right? So if you feel like you're lost in thought a lot, then that's what the common experience is for people. So with this continuous awareness, the invitation is to just slowly come back to whatever it is you're doing in the moment. Well, just being conscious, continuously conscious of what you're doing. So you still use your mind, of course, right? But you're consciously using your mind, and it's not lost in thought. The other thing they found was that people that are when people are not conscious of what they're doing, their happiness scores are lower. When people are conscious, so aware of what they're doing in the present moment, their happiness scores are higher. And this is irregardless of whether what they're doing was pleasant or unpleasant. That's amazing, right? You can be aware of something you're doing that is unpleasant and actually feel happy. That's kind of the power of resting in awareness, being in awareness. So when we're not, when awareness doesn't do the heavy lifting, awareness doesn't see, just seeing isn't enough to bring peacefulness, non-suffering. Then we move into investigation. Investigation is necessary. We investigate to see how we create problems for ourselves. So, what are our habitual patterns? What are the holes in the sidewalk that we fall in? What are our patterns that just keep replaying that cause suffering? And we have to investigate and see. And we look at what is happening. Investigate so we can understand it. What are my habit loops, my thought patterns? Where's anxiety, stress? Where is it actually made worse by some of the things that we do and how we relate to it? So we really penetrate and see how we create difficulties in our lives. So we understand when we're grasping, right? And we understand when we're pushing away, and how this creates suffering. And for some people, just seeing how I've had a few people um, emailing me recently about this whole selfing, how just identifying with the self creates suffering, and investigating that. So we're clinging to this sense of self, which is, of course, what grasping and pushing away reinforces. So the whole point is to see how we create suffering for ourselves. Investigate to see how we create suffering for ourselves, what habit loops, in other words, exist that create suffering for ourselves. We explored those habit loops in terms of how they create anxiety, stress, worry. Anxiety is a very common habit loop. So we can start to see, there's worry. This is creating, deepening what was slightly stressful is now very stressful. It's moving into anxiety. And we talked a little bit about, some people say, well, I need to plan. Is that worrying? And that is a really good question, because we do need to plan, right? There's what I call practical planning that needs to occur. And so there's to just investigate and see, where's that line between planning and worrying? Right? There's a line there, and you start to see, okay, this is planning. I can, I don't know, take something that we might be doing in the future, like going to the airport. Hooray, going on a trip somewhere. And you've got to plan the trip to the airport. So you might double check that how we've got the ride, and double check the time, right? And you've got to, because airplanes will leave without you. So there needs to be some planning that occurs. Now, can you start to see if it tips into worry? You start to check the flight 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. You call a cab driver, I guess, or check the Uber app or whatever app, and to check that the ride is coming, or call your friend and check to see if they're going to remember that they're taking you. So you can start to see how that becomes worry, which then just creates more anxiety. So just kind of being aware where we tip from planning to worry. I think that kind of investigation can be very, very helpful. So that's what I'm really what I'm talking about when I say, investigating and seeing. So we're really looking at how we create dukkha, right? And then we can see, okay, I can let go of that, and now I can see the cessation of dukkha. All I'm getting out of all this worry is dukkha. And I can see how just bringing curiosity to perhaps this urge to, check and check again, and check once more, and check for the 15th time. I can bring curiosity to this urge, hold it in mindfulness, and see that non-suffering can arise instead of suffering. this is this is this is the practice. And of course, it's every once in a while our worry gives us tells us that, yes, I need to worry. It's that one one in 100 times where you do check the 15th time and you find out the flight's change, or something's, you go, oh geez, see, yeah, I needed to worry about that, or it wouldn't have gone properly. It's kind of like hitting the jackpot. You got about the same odds as playing the slot machines. Every once in a while you do win. It can the slot machine, the winning every once in a while keeps you coming back, right? Keeps you putting the money in and pulling the lever on the slot machine. It's kind of like, can be like this, a bit like this with worry. It works once or twice and you go, oh yeah, I got to keep doing it. So that's another thing to see, is how we can get caught in thinking that, yeah, this is the right way to. It causes anxiety, but I really need to do it, and seeing through that. So the first key, and I haven't even got to the sort of core of the talk yet. The first key is bringing mindfulness to our lives, and bringing wisdom, so sati and panna, to our lives. And I'd like to talk about the 5 spiritual faculties. Have folks heard of those, the 5 spiritual faculties? It's kind of a neat little list from the Buddha's teachings. And the idea is that we need to balance these spiritual faculties as we engage in the world. So the first one, the lead one, is sati, which is mindfulness. That's what it's been translated. Most popular, I guess, translation is sati. So that's the lead. You can almost think of it as 5 horses, and that's the lead horse pulling the other 4 horses. And then the next 2 horses are samadhi and viriya, which is concentration and wise effort. So we're balancing, the effortless effort and the concentration as faculties, spiritual faculties. And you can see why those 2 are useful to balance, right? Because we can get too effort or willful in our concentration practice. So that's why it's good to balance it with wise effort. So concentration is a important spiritual faculty, but it also needs to be balanced with appropriate effort. And then the next 2 are saddha and panna. And saddha is this faith. It often gets translated as faith, and not in the sense of blind faith, more in the sense of confidence in the practice, and that's balanced with wisdom. So we're balancing the sometimes the wisdom's not there, then we have confidence in the practice that wisdom will arise. So sometimes we continue, even though the wisdom might not have arisen, we continue because we have confidence in the teachings of the Buddha, confidence in in the practice, confidence because we've seen the results of the practice. So wisdom can flourish. With wisdom, we can have faith that we will receive wisdom not yet realized. This is a really important part of the practice, is that faith that wisdom not yet realized will be received. Sometimes you practice and you I know I went through a long period where I kind of doubted. I thought, really, am I going to really get much more out of this. It seems like you stall, right? You just kind of do this every day. I get up and geez, I could be doing something else with this hour every morning, and nothing seems to be happening. So in those times, especially when doubt is arising, when perhaps things feel like they've stalled, very important time to have that faith or confidence that the practice is progressing. You just may not be sensing it directly in those moments. So those are the 5 spiritual faculties. Really, really a useful way to see your engagement in the world. So just seeing if you're balancing those, and that's the key part of it. Is the Buddha talked about how those have to be in balance with awareness, the lead, and that's why I really started talking about how important awareness is. It's the lead faculty in those 5. Without that, the others can't move in your life. And with those 5, as you engage in the world with those 5 spiritual faculties, then insights arise as you practice. That insight I spoke about and insights never sound like big deals, but really an insight is only as you can only feel. It's only important to the extent that you feel how it's changed, the effect it's had on you, put it that way. Putting it into words don't usually mean it. So I can say, I had the insight that when my mind wanders, I feel uneasy. Well, you hear that, and that's like, yeah, almost so what, right? It's kind of a shoulder shrug statement for it's just a statement, but as an insight, it's felt, it's known in the bones. Then it's that is the sense of it, and they arise spontaneously, right? We've talked about this. When the conditions are ripe, the causing conditions come together, and insight arises. So I will open it up for some questions and comments and dialogue at this point.